We're kind of continuing on from last week, but we're just going deeper into a lot of that stuff. A lot from the list that was given last week. And it's all, well, the series is called Works of Faith in a Place of Rest. And so before I kind of get into the works of faith, we just want to focus on the place of rest. And the place of rest is intimacy with God. That's where our resting place is. And so we're kind of going to do that first, and then we're going to go into the next part. But on Wednesday, I went to a Bible study, and we were talking about Revelations 2, about the church of Ephesus. And whenever we were talking about it, God was revealing some stuff to me. And really, I was at this place, I believe, where the church of Ephesus was. But I'm going to start in verse 2. But he's talking to Ephesus. Jesus says, I know all that you've done for me. You have worked hard and persevered. I know that you don't tolerate evil. You've tested those who claim to be apostles and proved they are not, for they were impostors. I also know how you bravely endured trials and persecutions because of my name, yet you have not become discouraged. But I have this against you. You have abandoned the passionate love you had for me at the beginning. Think about how far you have fallen. Repent and do the works of love you did at first. We'll just stop right there. So he's telling the church of Ephesus, he's saying you're doing all of these things and they're really good. He says you've worked hard, you persevered, you don't tolerate evil. You're proving the false prophets, the false apostles. You're enduring trials and persecutions. You're not becoming discouraged. They're doing a whole lot of stuff right. And he says, but you've abandoned the passionate love you had for me at the beginning. And whenever we were studying this, I was looking at that and I thought, Lord, have I ever really passionately loved you at all? Because the question was asked, how was it whenever you first came to Christ? What did you feel? What were you doing? What was going on? And for me, I can't think of one moment I came to Christ because at a young, probably about 7 or 8 years old, my grandfather was taking me to church, so I knew about Jesus and I probably accepted him 20 times. So, there wasn't a whole lot of, like completely changed, from a complete grown person that was sinning, and have that experience because I kind of knew him at a young age. And so that really wasn't there. I didn't really understand what a relationship even was at that age. But there have been times in my life where I've been close to the Lord. And there are a lot of people that do have that changing experience as an adult, and all of a sudden they feel that love and they come to Jesus because of love. They do all of these things and they're on fire for Him. You want to spend all your time with Him. You want to just get into this Word constantly. You want to go and witness to other people because you just want to tell them what you have. You have that excitement. He calls it passionate love. There's a passion there. And over time, I think we get to the point where Ephesus is. They're doing everything right. They're enduring. And they're being patient. They're not becoming discouraged. They are, they're going through all of this stuff. But he says, but you've abandoned the passionate love. And so as I was thinking about that, I thought in a marriage relationship, because I can really relate to that. Whenever you're first together and dating, and even whenever you're first married, you have that passionate love. You always want to be around each other. You always want to talk to each other. You're always thinking about each other. You're constantly together, and you have that excitement about it. And then over time, that starts to wear off a little bit as you start getting into a routine of life and things start happening and you just kind of let some of that stuff go. And so he was showing me that there is something we can do about that. And he tells them that they need to repent and do the works of love you did at first. So it kind of goes with the works of faith. But the works of love that you did at first, what he's talking about there is that intimate relationship. The same things you did whenever you were intimate with the Lord at the beginning are the same things that we still need to be doing, even if the feeling isn't there. that we need to still be doing those things, because that's works of love. And as I was reading this, and I thought, well, you know, why abandoning the first love? And he says in 1 John, I'm sorry, if I can find it. I can't find it in my notes. Anyway, in 1 John, he says that we love because he first loved us. And so his love is what pulls us to him whenever we first become saved. And so because of that, then we're able to love. But he was showing me it's not just loving others, it's loving him. That we don't know how to love him unless we first accept his love for us. And so we have to know how he loves us and how he sees us. And that's part of the relationship and spending that time with him. And so last week we read some Song of Solomon, because it shows his passionate love for us. And it actually shows the beginning of a relationship, the beginning of a marriage. And I just want to read a couple of them. I'm not going to read a whole lot of it. We read chapters 1 and 2, parts of it, last week. And so I'm going to read a little bit of 3 and a little bit of 4. Dang it. And I'm going to start at the beginning of 3, because this is the woman, this is the bride. And think about what we just read in Revelation and how it kind of goes along with this. It says, night after night I'm tossing and turning on my bed of travail. Why did I let him go from me? How my heart now aches for him, but he is nowhere to be found. So I must rise in search of him, looking throughout the city, seeking until I find him. Even if I have to roam through every street, nothing will keep me from my search. Where is he, my soul's true love? He is nowhere to be found. And I'm going to skip down to verse 4. It says, just as I moved past them, I encountered him. I found the one I adore. I caught him and fastened myself to him, refusing to be feeble in my heart again. Now I'll bring him back to the temple within, where I was given new birth, into my innermost parts, the place of my conceiving. So if you notice, the bride says, why did I let him go from me? And now because of that, she said she's in her bed of travail. She's looking for him. He's nowhere to be found. And so she knows that her heart aches for him. And if you're in that place where, not that you've left God, but you've let that first love go, your spirit is probably where it says, my heart aches. My spirit now aches for him. And notice what she does. She said, I rise in search of him, looking throughout the city, seeking until I find him. Even if I have to roam through every street, nothing will keep me from my search. And that's the answer right there. How do we get back to that first love? She tells you, I'm going to rise. I'm going to search. Nothing is going to keep me from finding him. In other words, nothing is going to keep me from loving him. Nothing is going to keep me from getting back to that intimate relationship with him. And she doesn't look very far. And then she says, I found the one I adore. I caught him and I fastened myself to him. In other words, she cleaved herself to him. She was right there by his side, intertwined with him, refusing to be feeble in my heart again. So refusing to let these things, or we can say in chapter 2 where it says the troubling foxes, to let these troubling foxes get in and disconnect us, because we do, not because of him. We can't ever be disconnected from his love through him. But it gets us kind of distracted from our first love. And so that's the answer right there. And so I was asking God yesterday. Well, I wasn't really asking. We were kind of, Eric and I were talking last night, and he kind of showed me that there's a place where we have to become intentional with what we do. Okay, so just like in a marriage relationship, you have all of the stuff at first. You're very intimate. You're wanting to be with each other all the time. There's a whole bunch of romance. There's all that stuff going on. If you let that go, then you need to go back and do exactly what she says right here. We're going to go back and search for it and find it, and I will not stop until I get it. And then once I find that, I'm going to fasten myself to him. And so he told me there has to be an intentionality with it. You have to intentionally do these things. Because the feelings are there at first, you don't have to think about it a whole lot. You just want to read your word. You just want to spend the time with him. There's not a whole lot of thinking to it. It's where I want to be. But then as something happens or as time goes on, those first feelings kind of go away, because that's all they are, is emotions. It's not your spirit. Your spirit man still wants that, but your soul kind of goes away a little bit, lets distractions come in. So he said we have to be intentional about bringing ourselves back to that place. There are things that we're going to have to be intentional about doing. Just like in a marriage relationship, I have to be intentional about some things. Even though some of the first feelings may be gone, we have to be intentional about spending time together, about communicating, about romance. We have to be intentional with those things. And then he said, just like it says here, then whenever you get back to that place, then you fasten yourself to it. And then you're back in that place again where you were at first. So I'm going to move on to the next chapter in Song of Solomon, just to let you know how he still feels about you. He says, listen, my dearest darling, you are so beautiful. You are beauty itself to me. Your eyes glisten with love like gentle doves behind your veil. What devotion I see each time I gaze upon you. And so this is after she's lost him and then found him. And he says, I see your devotion. You're like a sacrifice ready to be offered. We are to offer ourselves to him every single day. When I look at you, I see how you've taken my fruit and tasted my word. Your life has become clean and pure, like a lamb washed and newly shorn. You now show grace and balance with truth on display. Your lips are lovely as Rahab's scarlet ribbon, speaking mercy, speaking grace. The words of your mouth are as refreshing as an oasis. What pleasure you bring to me. I see your blushing cheeks open like the halves of a pomegranate, showing through your veil of tender meekness. When I look at you, I see your inner strength, so stately and strong. You are as secure as David's fortress. Your virtues and grace cause 1,000 famous soldiers to surrender to your beauty. Your pure faith and love rest over your heart as you nurture those who are yet infants. And then her reply is, I've made up my mind. Until the darkness disappears and the dawn is fully come, in spite of shadows and fears, I will go to the mountaintop with you. And then you skip on, yes, I will be your bride. I've made up my mind. In other words, she was intentional. The bride, we are supposed to be intentional. I've made up my mind that in spite of everything that's going on, I'm going to the mountaintop with you. That mountaintop is the secret place. That's the place of rest. That's the place where you have the intimate relationship with him. Moses, whenever he went to be with God, to speak with God and be with him face to face, where did he go? Up the mountain. Jesus oftentimes was found on the mountainside with his Father, his intimate time. Elijah was in a cave, and even though he was running away scared, he was intimate with his God. See, that's where that's showing right there. I've made up my mind. I've made up my mind. It doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't matter if there's shadows. It doesn't matter if there's fears. I'm intentionally going to go to that mountaintop with you. I'm intentionally going to go into that secret place with you. I'm intentionally going to set aside time to be with you. And he goes on and talks about how beautiful we are. And he says, now you are ready, my bride, to come with me as we climb the highest peaks together. Come with me through the archway of trust. We will look down from the crests of glistening mounts and from the summit of our sublime sanctuary. Together we will wage war in the lion's den and the leopard's lair as they watch nightly for their prey. For you reach into my heart. With one flash of your eyes, I'm undone by your love. My beloved, my equal, my bride. You leave me breathless. I'm overcome by merely a glance from your worshiping eyes. For you've stolen my heart. I'm held hostage by your love and by the grace of righteousness shining upon you. Your loving words are like the honeycomb to me. Your tongue releases milk and honey. For I find the promised land flowing within you. The fragrance of your worshiping love surrounds you with the scented robes of white. And he keeps going. Okay? So this actually shows, that's why I like Song of Solomon, and that's why I'm constantly reading it, is because it really shows a relationship. And it shows that intimacy that we're supposed to have. And I'm just going to give you the definition for intention. So in other words, whenever you intend to do something, it's a determination to act a certain way, a resolve, a process of healing incised wounds, which I thought was really cool. It's a process of healing. It's a goal, a plan, a purpose, a target. It's a stretching or a bending of your mind toward an object. When the mind with great earnestness of choice fixes its view on any idea, it considers it at every side and will not be called off by the ordinary solicitation of other ideas. In other words, it becomes convinced. Your mind, you will bend your mind if you're intentional, it will become convinced at the thing that you have your focus on. And then it's an object to be accomplished. And so that, whenever we're intentionally going to Him, whenever we're intentionally spending that time with Him, what we're doing is we're telling our mind and we're telling ourselves we're going to do whatever we have to get to that place, to be with Him. And eventually it's going to transform your thinking. And nothing is going to be able to convince you otherwise that this is where I need to be. Nothing's going to be able to pull you out of that place. That's why it's on a mountaintop. A lot of things can't get up to the mountaintop, but we can with Him. And then intimacy, I wanted to give you that definition too. I kind of like definitions. It's a familiar friend or associate, one to whom the thoughts of another are entrusted without reserve. So my thoughts, my feelings, everything I have, I'm entrusting it to God without reserve. I don't have any reserve of doing that. I share everything with Him. I was listening to Creflo Dollar, and he was talking about intimacy, and he goes, I'm letting you into me to see. So in other words, God, I'm opening myself up to you, and I'm letting you into me and see. And it's the same way whenever we're doing that, then He's saying, I'm going to open up myself to you, and you're into me, and then you see. That's what it is. If you're spending... he talked about in a marriage relationship, if you were going and telling people your deepest desires and your fears and everything it is about you, and you're going to another person that's not your spouse, I'm not talking about God, I'm talking about people, then you're not intimate with your spouse, you're being intimate with this other person. And so we tend to do that. We would rather be intimate with somebody else, and I don't know if it's because it's flesh, and we can touch them, than we are with God. And we think we're hiding stuff from Him. We're really not. But we don't even spend the time to go to Him. He knows everything. He already knows how we feel. He already knows what we're going through. He knows better than we know. But He wants us to be able to go to Him and tell Him these things. Ask Him those questions, and you'll get the answers. Just spend time with Him. And so, I'm just going to go past that. So all of this intimacy, the reason why I'm going through that is because, again, I like what Creflo said. He goes, every issue in life can be solved through an intimate relationship with God. Every single issue that we have in life can be solved through an intimate relationship. What we try to do is like what the church in Ephesus is doing. We're doing all those things. We're being vigilant. We're making sure that there's not false prophets coming in. We're enduring temptations. We're enduring trials. We may be even getting into the Word a little bit or coming to church. But we're doing all of those things to try to get something. I'm going to go to church because I need healing. Well, the first place you should go is to Him. That's the very first place you should go, because you have that intimate relationship with Him. And I thought I had that written down. And we talked about last week how the purpose of salvation is for that intimate relationship. And so whenever we have that intimate relationship, then all the mechanics, the reading of the Word, all these things just come naturally. We don't have to work at it anymore. That's why, I like the works of faith or the works of love. If we're doing this, we're not having to work from it. And Creflo gave the example. He said, if you get water poured on you, you automatically are wet. Right? So if we have the intimate relationship with God, that's the water, and immediately we're going to be wet. That's just a consequence of being doused in water, right? But he said a lot of times what we do is we're trying to get wet without the water. You can't do it. It can't happen. And and in our minds you think, man, that just sounds silly, but that's what we do. We try to get the wet without the water. He says, seek ye first my kingdom and my righteousness, and all these things will be added. See, we're trying to get the wet, and we're not trying to seek Him first. And so we go to every other person instead of going to Him first. And that's what He wants. He wants us to come to Him first. And there's examples in the Bible where people did not do that. They did not go to him first. And we're going to go, I can find it. Okay, maybe not. Okay, yeah. Isaiah 31. And I'm going to be reading out of the Message. And it's right after Song of Solomon. So if you were there, you're just got to go over one more. And I'm going to read verses 1 through 3 in the Message. He says, "Doom to those who go off to Egypt thinking that horses can help them, impressed by military mathematics, awed by sheer numbers of chariots and riders. And to the Holy of Israel, not even a glance, not so much as a prayer to God." And I'm just going to stop right there. Wait, no. Skip down where it says, "Egyptians are mortal, not God, and their horses are flesh, not spirit. When God gives a signal, helpers and helped alike will fall in a heap and share in the same dirt grave." So notice it says that Israel, they went off to Egypt thinking that Egypt was going to help them. Because they looked and they saw that they had this great military. They saw that they had all these chariots. They saw that they had all of this stuff that could help them win. And it said, "Into the Holy of Israel, there was not even a glance, not so much as a prayer." They didn't even glance. In a Song of Solomon, he says, "With just your glance, I'm undone by your love." They didn't even glance at God. They didn't even give him any consideration whatsoever. And he says, at the end of that, he says that Egyptians are mortal. They are not God. Their horses are flesh. They are not spirit. And when he gives the signal, the helpers and the helped alike will fall into a heap and share in the same dirt grave. And it reminded me of the scripture that says it's the blind leading the blind. See, whenever we are going, it's not even it can be the most simple decision of the day, like what do I wear today? It could be that simple. And all the way to the biggest problems that we have in life. And instead of glancing at God, instead of praying to God, instead of going to God, we go to those that look like they have it all together. That looks like they're strong, that looks like they could help us. Or we'll go to social media. You see it all the time. We'll do everything else except go to God. And then he says that what ends up happening is the people that are being helped and the helpers will all fall into a heap. So if I'm going to follow after somebody that's not God and do what they say, then I'm going to end up in the same heap that those people ended up in. Because I'm literally following the blind people instead of following God. And so all of this is kind of going into what I want to get into is bold. Because he keeps pulling out that word bold and having boldness. And we talked about it last week whenever we talked about the steps. Out of the 5 steps, the last 2, the request and the made known, is the boldness. And so whenever we are intimate with God, whenever we are going to him with everything, whenever we're intentional about going to him with everything, I mean, and that could be like going to him and saying, "What do I need to wear today, Lord? I couldn't decide what I wanted to do with my hair." I literally, because I was sitting there like, what should I do? Should I do this? I went to God about it. What do you want me to do with my hair? What should I do, Lord? And he showed me. He showed me several times because I was like, no, maybe I don't. And he goes, "No, this is what you need to do." He showed me and he gave me the reasons why. And that may seem silly. Why would you go to him and ask him what kind of haircut you have? Because if I'm going to him with the little stuff like that, eventually I'm just going to automatically do it. And what that's doing is building my relationship with him. To where he is every single part of my life. He is making the decisions. Because he knows my life better than I do. And that's where I want to be. And so I do those little things now because I'm getting to where, actually what you're getting to is a place where you're praying constantly. Because you're constantly in communion with him. You're constantly talking to him. We talk to ourselves in our head all day, every day. Women probably more so than men. I can think of 100 different things all at once and I'm going like this. God can keep up. My husband can't. He tries, but he can't. He can keep up. And he told me it's just a matter of changing that mindset and bending those thoughts toward me. Bending those questions towards me. And whenever we do those things, then just because we're doing it, remember I said, whenever we get the water on us, we automatically get wet. We get benefits of having that intimate relationship. And one of those benefits is boldness. And as I was thinking about it, and even if you look at the definitions, boldness is really the opposite of fear. And I've dealt with fear, and I have submitted and succumbed to fear for a lot of my life, and I'm not doing it anymore. And because of that, I was not able to be bold. I wanted to be bold. It's kind of like the lion in the Wizard of Oz that says, I want courage. He wanted boldness, as bold as a lion, but he was too scared. And so he was going to a wizard to do it. We don't have to go to the wizard. We have God. If we're intimate with him, then this boldness is going to come. And so bold, if you're looking in the dictionary, it means it's daring, you're courageous, brave, fearless, confident, showing a great liberty of expression, showing a fearless, daring spirit. You're adventurous, you're free. And then I heard another definition from Creflo. He said it's a liberty and a freedom to engage in privileges that have been given to you by right of sonship. So we are made sons and daughters of God, right? We're adopted into his family. And so because of that, there's a liberty and a freedom to engage in the privileges that we have as his sons and daughters. He's the king, right? So that makes us prince and princesses. So anything that like you would think of a prince and a princess could have, their authority, their privileges, you're taking advantage of it. You're free to do that. I like what Creflo Dollar said. He goes, in our offices, if my kids want to come see daddy, they don't care who's in there. They don't care who's at the door. If they're like, you can't go in, and they're like, yes, I can. That's my daddy. And I'm just going to walk right in. And that's how it is. Whenever we're adopted, we're his sons and his daughters, we have those same privileges. We have that authority to be able to go boldly to his throne of grace. He talks about that in Hebrews 4. He said, come boldly to the throne of grace. So we boldly come to him, and we have that right because we're sons and daughters. We have a right to execute what's been given us to execute. We have the authority. Okay, so that's part of being with him, of that intimacy with him. And a lot of times we'll say, and I've done it, I'm waiting on God. I'm waiting on him. And that's not actually what the scripture says. As we read the scripture, those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. We need to be waiting for him, not on him. So let me tell you what the difference is. If we're waiting on him, it's like we're a waitress, right? As a waitress, you wait on somebody. Whenever you give them something, you expect what? The payment in return. You expect a tip, correct? Okay, if you're a really good waitress, you're going to get a bigger tip. So you're waiting on somebody expecting something. So if you're waiting on God, you're just literally sitting there doing nothing and just waiting for him to work. Waiting for him to give you something. But instead, we need to be waiting for God. So what's the difference in that? If I'm waiting for God, that means that I've gone to God and I've asked him something, or I've asked him for something, or I've asked him a question about something, and I'm waiting for him to do what he's going to do. That's different. I'm not waiting on him because I'm going to give him something in order to get something back. I'm waiting for him. In other words, I'm going to go to him first, and I'm going to wait for him to tell me where to go. I'm going to wait for him to tell me what step to take. I'm going to wait for him to tell me how I need to, cut my hair. Does that make sense? I'm going to wait for him. That means there's an intimate relationship there. That means that I've gone to him as my father, and I boldly said, this is something it's in the word. I have need of this, and I'm going to sit there and I'm waiting for him to bring it to me because I know he's going to. And it's not just going to other people, it's also trying to do it ourselves. Sometimes, and God showed me this, it's a matter of control. I want to control it myself. I want to hurry up and just get done with it myself, take care of it myself, and be done with it. And so I rely on myself instead of waiting for him to do that thing that I've been asking for. And that's whenever we can get ourselves in trouble. Trying to do things ourselves, that's whenever we start messing up. Abraham and Sarah did that exact thing. They got impatient. He knew he was He was going to be the father of many nations. His wife got impatient waiting for a baby and had him go and sleep with her handmaiden and had this other child. They got impatient. They did it themselves instead of waiting for God to bring the child. And we do that a lot of times because we just try to deal with it ourselves first. And then we use him as a last resort, which is what Israel did, right? They went to Egypt first, and God wasn't even a thought until it was their last resort. He's not our last resort. That is not intimacy. If we're waiting to use him as our last resort of whatever it is that we need, that is not an intimate relationship. That means I'm more intimately acquainted with or connected with either myself or the people that I'm going to.